that's a hard one for people to understand, is like, take someone where they're at and move them in a direction. Like, that's, again, compound effect of small habits over an extended period of time leads to a major lifestyle change. And it doesn't have to be keto, paleo, carnivore, vegan, vegetarian. Like if you like that, as long as, like, because ultimately it's about sustainable lifestyle. If you like a quote unquote name brand diet, they're not inherently bad. It's just, you got to know what actually are, just like in aviation, you got to know what the actual scientific mechanisms are. You may use them in a different nuanced way to get you there, but like, that's what so many people get caught up in. It's like, you need some type of control of restriction, but people's perception of restriction is different. Some people go, I go low carb and I have no problem. Okay, cool. That's fine. That's a way to control calories. You don't have to, but that's a strategy. And some people go, if you take my carbs, it's not life's not worth living. Okay, cool. We're not going to restrict your carbs. Like, we're to a degree. We're not going to cut them out. Like, we got to find, again, calories, protein, like all this kind of stuff. But it's like, take someone where they're at, what they perceive as a sustainable lifestyle, and just make it work.
Hello, and welcome to the Generate Your Value podcast. I'm your co-host, Andy McDowell, founder and owner of Generate Your Value, providing self-leadership, leadership, and business coaching services for corporate executives and business owners.
And I'm Zach Levy, your other co-host. I run a nationwide financial service business with my wife, Megan.
Together, Zach and I have the intention to bring you tips, concepts, ideas, suggestions, stories, and analogies from A to Z, which will help you to grow your personal brand and leadership skills in such a way that joy, happiness, and success, as you define it for yourself, are achieved.
We hope to use our gifts, talents, and experiences in business and leadership to generate value in your life. And with that being said, let's move to our topic for today.
Hello, and welcome to the Generate Your Value podcast. My name is Andy McDowell. No, I'm not an actress. But that's okay. You're still here. Somehow that name attracted you in to the podcast. And I can't thank you enough for spending that valuable resource in your life called time to come spend it with myself and my guest today. We're going to spend some time on self-leadership. As you know, self-leadership is a big part of my business and what I do and what I help people with. And self-leadership encompasses a lot of different parts of your life. And we're going to concentrate on one of those parts, and that's your health. So my guest today is Mr. David Roden, who comes to us from, if I remember right, the upper Midwest.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's been a not so cold year, but we got dumped by a little bit, but not too bad. I'm in Michigan, Grand Rapids.
Right. So David is in the fitness business, but he's had an incredible life story of how he got into it, which is what I wanted him to draw out and talk to us about. And I'm going to ping him with a few questions around self-leadership with his journey and so forth, in hopes that his answers might help you in your own journey, particularly if you struggle with weight. I struggle with weight. And so I might be learning something today as well in this journey of our next 45 or so minutes. So let me read David's bio, and then we'll bring him in full time into this conversation. So David, from suicidal obesity to a life of health and happiness, David has transformed his life from weighing over 400 pounds by the time he was 18 years old. He had pre-diabetes, super high blood pressure. However, in the last 10 years, he's been down around 200 pounds in body fat. He's reversed his high blood pressure and pre-diabetes. He's a published author, wrote a book called Drop the Baggage: From Suicidal Obesity to a Life of Health and Happiness. He's competed in 2 bodybuilding competitions and has helped hundreds of people lose weight. And when I say lose weight, I'm not talking about 10, 20 pounds. I'm talking about over 100 pounds of weight. He's created and produced a documentary called The Anti-Diet Diet Club, which in the documentary he talks about debunking the diet and learning the truth behind extreme weight loss. So, David, welcome to the podcast. Can't thank you enough for taking that valuable resource time of yours to come in and share your story with us today.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate you asking me to be on the podcast. I'm looking forward to it.
So, as I always do, I like we're a listening audience to get to know you a little bit better and your life story. So, pick a time in your timeline that you want to start at, and give us the so-called Reader's Digest version of how you got to be where you are today.
Absolutely. So for me, I'm 32. So I started my transformation when I was 22. I've been down around 200 pounds of body fat for a decade. We'll pull it back one step. Like, all right, I weighed 400 pounds by the time you're 18 years old. The thing that people always ask is like, how? Like how? Like what? Do you have a medical condition? Like what?
Mm-hmm.
What got you there? And some of the backstory of where I'm at makes things super interesting because what's wild is my dad's a cardiologist. He's a heart doctor.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was a nurse. I grew up in a very strong, level-headed, loving family. Like I never had any problems. Honestly, the biggest thing I always joke about is I had the most sunshine and rainbows upbringing you could ask for. Like so to be honest, all the resources, all the love, two
Mm-hmm.
family household, everything by the time I was 18 years old, I was 400 pounds, pre-diabetic, hypertensive, and felt so trapped in my 400-pound body, I almost ended my life twice. But the crazy part too is no one knew. Everyone knew me as the funny fat kid that always had the friends over. My parents didn't know. No one knew. It wasn't even to the point where I published, like I wrote my manuscript for my book and I had my dad read it. Where when I went into my suicidal thoughts and the depression and feeling trapped at that size, he broke in front of me and was like, he felt like a failure as a father, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I was like, Dad, there was nothing you could have done. Like, it is what it is. We all make mistakes. Like, everything's good now. I'm down 200 pounds. Like, everything's fine. And to be honest, I'm grateful for my 400-pound life because it allows me to do this. And there's a lot of people in this position that have this same struggle. And I get to come from an empathetic understanding, but also a challenging perspective because I lived it. I felt as trapped as what everyone feels, but I understand what it really takes to lose hundreds of pounds and transform their life. And so, how I got there was actually really simple. My dad loved me, or my dad worked crazy hours. My mom loved me to death, and her way of showing love was to always say yes. So you're lacking a masculine father figure that tells you no,
Mm-hmm.
and you got a mom who loves you so much she always says yes. What does every 8 to 18-year-old kid want? Food and video games. And so I ate a ridiculous amount of food and I played a lot of video games. And sure enough, I was 300 pounds by the time I was like 13, 14, 400 pounds by the time I was 18. And then the big thing is like, you get to that size and you feel so trapped. You have this really bad relationship with food. You obsess over food. You use food to cope with stress. You have all these emotional issues tied to food and you get caught in the loop. And that's what got me there. Because obviously when people are thinking about losing 10, 20, 30 pounds, there's a little bit of a different mindset compared to losing hundreds. And you
Mm-hmm.
look at losing 100 plus and you're like, there's no way. I understand you can lose 10, 20, 30, but 100, 150, 200 pounds? No, that's too far gone. And I had the same belief. I thought at 18 years old that this was going to be my life. And I hated it so much that I almost ended my life because of it.
Yeah.
Thank God I didn't. But that's kind of like understanding the depths of where your mind can get to and how off place you can be. But honestly, I wouldn't change it for the world. And we can kind of, depending on how you want to do it, we can transition straight into how I started making the shift. Do you like what would you like to kind of go into from there?
No, let's save that for a few minutes.
Yep.
You have gone on a weight journey in your childhood, early 20s. For me, it was a self esteem journey.
Yep.
It didn't relate to a lot of eating. In fact, it was probably the opposite of that. But it caused you some issues in your life moving forward. For me, I brought my self-esteem issues into my first marriage. That was the baggage I brought in and was my contribution, if you will, to the downfall of the marriage. Right? Not being able to stand up for myself, not taking care of things I need to take care of, all from a self-worth kind of perspective.
Yep.
For you, even though your parents had sort of careers that don't make sense for what happened, I think it really speaks to, sort of the emotional side of life, not the mind and the brain, right? And mother is a nurse, dad is a cardiologist. They're in careers using their mind to help people with the issue. But when it came to the emotional side of themselves within the family, it was the exact opposite, right? Mom couldn't say no. Dad was never there. Didn't have an input because he was never there. And so you were kind of left at your own devices.
Yep.
Right. My dad was in corporate sales, fairly high up. He was traveling a lot away from home. So from the father side, I was kind of in the same boat you were. My mom probably could say no. I mean, I'm only estimating here, but my mom had an ability to say no, and maybe that's why the self-esteem issue didn't express itself from a weight perspective. I had a great group of friends. I was always out with sports with them, doing things and so forth. I wasn't sitting at home watching video games like you were, and maybe that was my saving grace from a weight perspective. But it caused more issues for me in relationships than it did from a weight perspective. My weight issues didn't come about until divorces. And then it was stress eating.
Yep, exactly.
From that perspective. So I can completely understand how you might feel as being trapped. I felt kind of trapped too, but it was not from a body weight health issue. It was from an emotional trap. How do I get myself out of here? And it took a divorce with kids as my big wake up call to say, I have two parents that stayed married for 61 years till my mom passed away. And that was my model. And so here I am at the end of a failed marriage going, what the heck? This is not the picture I had for myself, given I had this model to work from. And it was a big wake-up call for me to say, this is not the life that I want for myself. And so I've got to be introspective and take care to understand how I got myself to this place and what do I need to do to change it.
I mean,
so was it the suicidal moments for you that changed that clicked that switch going, I'm going to take ownership of my life and change things for myself? Or where was that moment for you?
See, that is honestly, it's wild how that works. The way I kind of convey it was no. So like my senior year of high school, I had 2 moments of extreme suicidal thoughts that like, I just need to end it. Like, I'm done with this. I'm done with the pain. It's frustrating. I actually didn't, I got to that point and then went to college, and kind of just lived through college for 2 to 3 years, floating right around 400 pounds. The shift came my junior year when the way I explain it is people shift from one of 2 places: inspiration or desperation. And it's a little bit of both. Like they both have their place. Some people, it's a desperate moment where they have the heart attack. They have the marriage fall apart. They, whatever it may be, and they hit the wall, the back to the wall. And they're like, if I don't change, I'm going to die. It's over. That's one side. But then flip side of the coin, it's inspiration too. And honestly, for me, desperation never got me there. It was inspiration. And my inspiration came about my junior year of college when I actually decided that med school wasn't for me. I didn't plan, like, I was pre med in college. I was in my junior year, and I was like, I just didn't like the general lifestyle of medicine and where it was going, of how many hours you're working,
Yeah.
like the lack of control over your schedule, all this kind of stuff. I saw it from the most extreme case, obviously cardiology. They're the most unbalanced like doctors out there. There's other professions that have a little bit more balance, but it's just there's none in cardiology. And you're because I mean you're saving lives through heart attacks constantly, so
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
probably a lot of hero complex in it.
exactly. And
Hmm.
my dad was no different. He loved what he did. That's why he did it. But you can lose yourself in
Hmm.
it. And so my junior year of college hit. Decided med school wasn't for me. I actually got pitched on. It's just funny. It's a small. I got pitched on a network marketing company. Was like the start to my transformation. And what it did was obviously the network marketing company is a network marketing company. It is what it is. But what happened was the people I was surrounding myself with are some of my dearest friends today. And a lot of those guys were big into personal growth, reading books, like taking 100% accountability. And so here's me at 400 pounds, and they had a weight loss product and stuff like that. And so I started on it. And the biggest shift came from the book, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Like that book, it's so simple, but it profoundly changed my perspective on weight loss, which was I mean, the compound effect. It's your life is not the quality of your life is not in do you go to college, do you not go to college? Do you get married, do you not get married? Do you have kids, do you not have kids? That's not where the quality of your life comes from. The quality of your life comes from these daily, almost insignificant habits and decisions that compound over 10, 20, 30 years
Yep.
into a whole different life. Like, do you tell yourself daily, hey, I love the man in the mirror? Or do you tell yourself daily, I hate the man in the mirror?
Hmm.
Like, do you go for a walk and average 10,000 steps per day walking, or do you live a very sedentary lifestyle? You sit for a day, nothing happens. You sit for a week, nothing happens. You sit for a year, there's some issues. You sit for a decade, you die. Like that's the same thing. And the same mentality when it came to fat loss, which was everyone thinks about from a business perspective the outcome. I want to build this company. For example, this documentary I'm coming out with, extreme weight, like the weight loss. I need to lose 200 pounds. That idea seems so astronomically impossible. You don't really try. Like that's what it comes down
Hmm.
to. You wish you do a couple steps, you do a couple like you do a couple things for a couple days, you lose a couple pounds, and you're like, whoopity friggin' do. I got 170 to go. F it, I'm going back to the way I used to be. And that's what happens. And so the biggest mental shift was like, hey, the only way you lose 200 pounds is if you lose 1 to 2 pounds a week for 100 to 200 weeks. That's it. If you want to lose 200 pounds, just lose 1 to 2 pounds a week for 100 to 200 weeks.
Hmm.
Oh, okay. I can wrap my head around that. And so at 400, I was 408 pounds at the time. And I go, all right, next Sunday, I'll be 406. Boom, I hit it. Next Sunday, 404. Boom, I hit it. Next Sunday, 402. I didn't care about losing 50. I didn't care about losing 100. I just fixated on 1 to 2 pounds a week. And before you know it, I was down 50. And when I stepped on the scale down 50 pounds, that I was in my like I was in my late junior, early senior year of college. And I remember standing on the scale, looking myself in the mirror and going, David, you're changing everything you don't like about yourself. Anything
Hmm.
you control, I'm changing it. I'm changing my entire life. And then over the next 16 months or so, I dropped another 150, and then 2 excess skin removal surgeries, and the rest is history. But like the biggest mental shift for me was not desperation, it was inspiration. It was being inspired by a subtle mental shift that compounded over years. And now we're here today. That's what people have a hard time understanding. Is desperation works, inspiration is great too.
Well, that's
So
why
yeah,
I use the example of building a house as an analogy in my coaching about what you're talking about here, right? So, foundation of your life is, like you said, those small things like mindset, like habits, like beliefs. and so forth is the foundation with which everything else is going to sit upon. But
100%.
when you're looking at 400 pounds, you're looking at that elephant and asking, how am I going to eat the elephant?
100%.
Right.
There's
So
no way.
losing a pound or two every week for 2 years or so is eating an elephant slowly, one bite
Yeah.
at a time. Just like, how do you eat that slice of pizza? You eat it one bite at a time. You don't shove the
Yep.
whole pizza slice in your mouth, right?
And that's what happens to so many people is
They get
they
overwhelmed
try
with the picture.
they try to take what should realistically take a year to 18 months
Mm-hmm.
and they try to get it done in 3 to 6. And then the problem is the lifestyle they're creating is not sustainable. And so they create this hyper restrictive. They lose a shit ton of weight really quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and then they can't maintain it. They go back to their old eating patterns, and they gain the weight back. And it's this constant diet recall, like diet culture, restrictive binge over and over and over again. And that is one of the major things I work with people on. It's like, guess what? Should you have pizza every day? No, probably not the best idea. Is it okay to have pizza once a week? Yeah. Yeah, have a slice or two of pizza once a week. It's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I literally have helped a couple of clients. They're a married couple. One's lost 160, one's lost 75 now, male female couple, and they have pizza every Friday. Every Friday they have pizza, and they've lost a combined 200 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't tell me you have to, like, but again, you got to limit these things, like, of course. But this idea, like, you can never have pizza again. Yeah, good luck with that. Like, I'm gonna say it. What's a life worth living without a slice of friggin' pizza every so often? I don't know. It's a life worth living, man.
Well, it's
Like,
about not depriving yourself, right?
yeah. And
It's
I
about
did the
doing
same
it in
thing.
moderation.
Yeah, and like you said though, we're emotional beings,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to talk about how people create associations to food. It's comfort.
Yep.
It helps relieve stress. Those things are dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And usually most of the time it's taught through family. Like, that's what my family did. Every time we celebrate, we eat food. Every time we get stressed, we eat food. Every time, whether you like, weight loss is actually really simple and logical, and it's not a hard process. The problem is humans are emotional beings, and you can't tie out the emotion to food. And so that's what makes things tough, is we're emotional beings.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't take that on, that's where the problem happens.
Yeah, for me,
So yeah.
for me, I put on 50 pounds after divorce number one.
Mm-hmm.
But as somebody that was constantly traveling on the road around the world for business, a lot of my time I was eating in restaurants
Yep.
or on the go in an airport or something where your food availability is kind of limited,
low.
right?
They care about taste. They don't care about calories.
I joined Weight Watchers and I lost the 50 pounds over 9 months. Not in a month. It was just like you said, I lost a pound or two every week. And I got educated while I was at it about what to do and what to look for. I was better educated when I sat at a restaurant somewhere in the world and looking at the menu. Being able, at first glance to reduce it to about 10% or
Yep.
20% of the menu is what's really available to me to eat in a much healthier way.
100%.
And where to pick those out, right?
Yep.
Type thing. So I got myself educated and did a lot better until I had another stressor in my life with another divorce. Moving forward, was able to keep that weight off because I got educated at the same time to truly understand what certain foods and preparations, if you will, do to the body.
100%. And it's the restaurant world is always interesting to me because it's like, I'm not here to demonize restaurants, but what's the goal of the restaurant? To make the most delicious food, to have you come back.
Right.
And they don't care about calories. They don't care about protein. They don't care about like choosing foods that are the most quote unquote optimal health for the person coming in. They want to make the food as delicious as possible so you come back. So guess
Right.
what? When you get vegetables, you got to be careful when you eat like cooked vegetables from restaurants, in the sense of, again, one time is not a big deal, but like you get cooked broccoli from a lot of these steakhouses, they're dousing it in butter. You have no idea how much butter they're actually putting into even their cooked vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's like you sometimes get duped on what you think you're consuming.
Yeah, it's the hidden calories, as they say.
Exactly. And so it's not that it's bad. It's just you got to know that restaurants are not in your quote unquote best interest for calories.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to think, like you said, 90% of the menu. Okay, I got to be really careful with stuff like this because it's super calorie dense. I got to be careful.
Well, once
here.
again, I was on a business trip for a week, right? So I was eating in a restaurant every single day.
Yep.
So I could have one night out of that week where I get to choose from the whole menu.
100%.
But the other 4 days, I got to restrict myself to the 10 or 20% of the menu that I know is going to be a lot healthier.
That's exactly what I do.
Or the risk is reduced, right? The risk, you truly don't know because you didn't prepare it, but the risk exposure, if you will, is greatly reduced.
100%. That's exactly how I do it. Like 1 to 2 meals a week, I indulge. I just whatever. But 90% of the time, I'm rhythmic. I'm habitual. Like I meal prep quite a bit personally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge advocate for meal prep. Obviously, in your situation, like I couldn't even imagine traveling as much as you do and somehow trying to stay to a plan because there's so much indulgence around you every single day. Where me, I have such a rhythmic
and you don't
life.
know what's going to be presented to you. You know,
Yeah.
I'd be sitting in business class on a plane with a 10 to 12, 13-hour flight where you're a captured audience. And generally 40 minutes or so after takeoff is the big meal. And you're getting handed a menu and there's only 3 to 4 selections in terms of your main entree.
Yep.
Right? So to go down to the 10 or 20% that's truly available to you, it's like, well, you get one out of this. You have no choice. Which one is it out of the 3 or 4,
my
right?
6th salad to this week. Oh.
You know?
Yep. No, 100%. That is the real deal. And that's where it's like, it's always important when I deal with clients too, in the sense of like, you got to take people where they're at. Like that's a hard thing for people to understand, and people get caught in the diet zealotry world. Is like, sometimes I have to deal. I've had clients that are 500-600 pounds, and they have a really bad relationship with, say, like macaroni and cheese, and like they eat macaroni and cheese every single day, and the idea of not having it is so astronomically outside of their ideal that it's like, if you were to take that macaroni and cheese out, they're going to binge. They're 100% going to binge. And so I'm like, okay, cool. How do I establish some macaroni and cheese into their daily life without it getting out of hand? And it's like, okay, so like I've literally had, I have a client of mine, and I literally he's lost 80 pounds now, and he has macaroni and cheese almost every single day. Now, again, serving size, how much is he having?
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot. But it's not zero.
Right.
And it's like, you got like, that's a hard one for people to understand, is like, take someone where they're at and move them in a direction. Like that's, again, compound effect of small habits over an extended period of time leads to a major lifestyle change. And it doesn't have to be keto, paleo, carnivore, vegan, vegetarian. Like if you like that, as long as, like, because ultimately it's about sustainable lifestyle. If you like a quote unquote name brand diet, they're not inherently bad. It's just, you got to know what actually are, just like in aviation, you got to know what the actual scientific mechanisms are. You may use them in a different nuanced way to get you there, but like that's what so many people get caught up in. It's like, you need some type of control of restriction, but people's perception of restriction is different. Some people go, I go low carb and I have no problem. Okay, cool. That's fine. That's a way to control calories. You don't have to, but that's a strategy. And some people go, if you take my carbs, it's not life's not worth living. Okay, cool. We're not going to restrict your carbs. Like well, to a degree, we're not gonna cut them out. Like we got to find, again, calories, protein, like all this kind of stuff. But it's like, take someone where they're at, what they perceive as a sustainable lifestyle, and just make it work. That's a big mental shift that people in the diet zealotry world just don't understand, is this all or none mentality just jacks you up. It just, it just, the diet culture just, if I'm not being perfect, I might as well binge. And it's like, no, that's not, it's not how
Well,
you have to do it.
it's kind of all about the dopamine hit, right? So when I sit down, if I'm having a conversation with a client and we're talking about the love languages, the way I like to describe love languages is there's 5 of them. They all express love, but people put different values on the 5, right? So if we were to use currency as an example, acts of service may only be worth $5 to you, but words of affirmation is worth $100 to you, right? And it's an expression of, I value this more, usually because you didn't get it as a child, but not always. But mac and cheese, that may be the $100 bill versus
Exactly.
a plate of broccoli may only be worth $2 to you because of you're expressing that that value on the dopamine hit, that comfort or something that's filling up for you, as opposed to something that's healthier for the body.
Yep.
And so how much of it then, I then have to ask the question then about mindset, right? Mindset from the perspective of, what are you feeding? Whenever I have somebody with, I'm coaching that's got bad behavior or things that are not serving their life, like maybe being in a toxic relationship, I'm like, okay, what is that toxic relationship feeding? That's the only reason you've got it in your life, is because it's feeding something. So what is it feeding in your life? So is that macaroni and cheese feeding not your body, but something emotional?
Mm-hmm. No,
For you.
100%.
And that might help people get to the crux of the issue for them, right?
Oh, definitely. But the whole thing there is like working on having those conversations with, why are you doing what you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you try to make someone shift everything overnight, a lot of people, again, it just creates this constant, it's too much too quick.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, all right, we got 30 years to change your life. Let's focus on what are the major hitting points. What's going to move the needle? The 80-20 rule. 80% of your like everything comes from 20% of your efforts.
Mm-hmm.
So what are those 20%? Like, what is the actual 20% that affects 80%? And like, once you get someone to know that, let's get the 20% that affects 80% done first. Then we can work on the nuance. Like it's absolutely worth optimization and getting to all that kind of stuff. But it's like, so many people, they put 80% of their focus into things that the 20% that doesn't matter. And they're wondering why they're struggling. They're wondering why they think they're somehow special. I would say on mindset too, one thing I've dealt with clients, and this is I try to look from obviously 2 lenses. You have the traditional ones and zeros, like Western medicine, metabolic world. Okay. And then you have the psychological, emotional, spiritual, Eastern medicine world.
Mm-hmm.
And they both have observational like they both have effect. Like that. It's always fun because I argue on both sides of the coin on this one to different groups, depending on who I'm talking to. And it's like, for example, one of the things that Western medicine has a really hard time, because it's all about ones and zeros, is the individual, the human. And a hard thing for people to understand is, no one can help someone change their life if the person is not willing to change their life.
Mm-hmm.
Period. There's no doctor, there's no drug, there's no surgery that can fix somebody if the individual is not saying, I'm ready to change.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no way around it. Yes, there's medications and drugs that help with weight loss. Yes, there's surgery that helps with weight loss. And yet those don't have a 100% success rate. Why? Because the individual and how they treat themselves and how they treat food and the psychology behind they think and their belief systems and identities, you can't take that out of it. Now, flip side of the coin, I know people that's like, it's just all about how you feel. I will never forget, I had a conversation with a woman. It was all about feelings. And I'm like, yeah, feelings matter. 100% feelings matter. You can feel like a cookie is an apple. It's not an apple. like you can be like, this cookie is an apple. In my head, it's an apple. I'm going to eat into it.
And
it's
you could be
like an apple.
feeding your feelings more than your body.
Exactly. And it's like you can't take away vitamins, minerals, fiber, and like all the scientific evidence of how the body works. It doesn't mean that feelings don't matter and how you treat yourself and food and all. No one's denying that. But it's like, let's come together here. Let's actually take a full quantitative, holistic approach. Look at the psychology, the brain, the thought process, the spirituality of food and yourself. And then also the ones and zeros: calories, protein, macronutrients, micronutrients, hormones, all this kind of stuff. Like, they both matter, but it's always you get the both polarities even there. And so it's fun, like trying to and that's why I think I'm blessed to have such consistent results with clients, is like, I can look at the two lenses. Okay, what's their issue? Is it actually a nutritional education issue, or is it an emotional psychological issue? Because they're not the same thing. People can be overweight for considerably different reasons.
Yep.
The fundamentals are the same. It's you're eating too much and you're sitting too much. But why are you eating too much and sitting too much?
That's why I love the word why. It is such a powerful word in people's lives, as well as in business. So I harp on the word why all the time. And it's really peeling the onion back. And why you get such engagement from people when you can answer the question why. And in a lot of ways, they want you to answer the question why, because that's where you get the connection from.
Yeah. My argument is, I don't really care what you think. I care why you think what you think. Like, what brought you to that conclusion? And that's always, most of the time, people don't even have that. They don't even know. Carbs are bad. Okay. Why? What brought you to that conclusion? Well, my mom told me how carbs spike your insulin and insulin makes you fat. Okay. Based upon that logic, that could be true. Is it true? And then all of a sudden, I can go into the comparative human controlled trials where they track carbs and insulin levels and fat loss, and it doesn't matter. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not true. I can see how you got there based upon that. It's just not backed in science. Like, it's just not. And it's the rhetoric of, no, you're wrong. Like, as soon as you just go at them and you don't ask them why to break down and actually draw from where the depths of where they're getting the information from, can you actually influence someone to make a shift? If you just say they're wrong, you're not going to actually help. Like, that's social media world right there. It's like, their ego takes over.
You can almost practically guarantee you're going to get that kind of response if you're not talking about the why.
Yep.
Because you're not going to get the buy-in. I mean, when I work with an executive and he or she is just saying, I'm not getting an engagement out of my team, that's almost the first thing I go to is, well, do you talk about the why at all? Do you talk about why you're doing this particular business strategy, or why you've developed this policy inside the company, or why we're going to build a profit sharing plan in this way?
Yeah, because it's like,
if you don't explain the why, it's very difficult to get somebody to buy in to what you're doing. And it's through the why that you get the engagement that you're looking for. Sometimes people sit in their power and authority too much. It's like, well, I shouldn't have to explain the why because what I say goes.
Yep.
Okay. True. What you say goes, but you're not going to get engagement from the team because you didn't show them the why. And in doing that, you're not really showing that you really care about them.
I always say it too in this lens, which is like, um, you're under the assumption that everyone sees everything the way you do.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, and that's something I struggle with because, like, being the science guy in my background, sometimes I make presumptions that when I say something, I'm talking about C and D, and I'm assuming they know A and B.
Mm-hmm.
They may not. And if you're just talking about C and D and making the assumption they know A and B to get to C and D, they don't get what you're doing. And so if you're not able to talk about the why and what, like, making sure they connect all the dots, they get lost in the process, which is your fault as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if that lies on you. If you, I think it's like in a course, I've heard this too, which I love. If you have a course and someone that buys your course is not getting the outcome that you are portraying, you missed a variable of education that they needed
Mm-hmm.
in order to get to where they needed to go, and that's your fault. Like, if someone doesn't get the outcome of whatever you're selling, weight loss, this and this, whatever it may be, you're missing something that they needed, and that's on you. So as a leader, if you're trying to get this outcome and it's not creating the outcome, you're missing something. Do I need to go depths into here? What am I missing? Like, it always goes, the leader has to take 100% responsibility, always. And so it's like, all right, what did I miss?
Mm.
What do I need to know?
Well, that's big part of the reason why, at the end of a yearly performance review with a team member of mine, I would ask the question, what can I do better? Because I'm trying to flush out those things. Like, where's my blind spot? What am I missing here that can bring out even more out of my team member in
100%.
terms of being productive or getting the results we're looking for, or whatever it can be. If it happens to you as a leader, you've got a blind spot, and are you looking for those blind spots? Because
100%.
not every human being's built exactly the same.
I do that all the time. I ask the people I respect that have consistent results. I ask them all the time, what am I missing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I missing something? Should I be? Obviously, I'm very confident in the information I know, but there's plenty of things I don't. So what am I missing? Like, what am that is super important from a leadership perspective, which is like, you should always have that 3, 4, 5 group of people that has credibility. I think it's super important. Like, you just can't choose random people.
Mm-hmm.
They got to have results, but that can look at lenses that you may not see. And it's super important that you constantly ask yourself, all right, what am I missing? Could I be missing something? Because that's where ego gets in the way, and that's where you get caught in corners, and that's where you lose big.
Yep. So what would you say are the 2 or 3 critical success factors for somebody who needs to lose a lot of weight? I mean, what are those foundational things that you, regardless if they lean towards Western or lean towards Eastern or whatever it may be, if you don't get these 2 or 3 things from your client in your coaching program and so forth, they're not going to be successful. So we're going to make sure these 2 or 3 things are in place as a minimum.
My number one is stop hyper fixating on diet and look at your life. Okay. You're making a life change. You're not doing a diet. You're not doing a workout routine.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just modalities of the how. And there's a lot of modalities of the how that can get you where you need to go. It's like there are some science, like hard sciences, but the whole thing is, especially when it comes to extreme weight, there's a lot of reasons why you're in the position you're in, and you have to take those on. Is it law of association, where you're just surrounding yourself with people who just binge eat all the time, don't care about their quality of health, and you get caught up in the association of that? And so you just happen to habitually over time make those decisions. You may have to look into that. Is it a limiting belief of, well, my whole family's fat, so I'm going to be fat for the rest of my life? Is it something like that? Is it a lack of education? And so you have to look at it from I'm changing my life perspective, not I'm doing what's the diet? or what's the fitness routine? Is it HIIT training? Is it, I heard it's CrossFit. If I do CrossFit, everything is sunshine and rainbows. No, it's just for the furthest from the case. And so the number one mental shift and the number one like absolute pillar is making someone understand there's a life issue, and you have to look at your life as a whole and figure out where are the missing pieces, like and like taking a holistic look at everything in your life. Is it a career path? Are you in a career path that there's just so much stress you just can't handle it? Like there's so many things we can talk about. And so you got to be honest with looking at your entire life and seeing what brought you to here and being honest with that.
But from a kind of a mental perspective, to be successful with that first item, you have to be able to say to yourself and believe in it that I own my life.
Yep.
I'm the only one responsible for it, the only one that can do the work, do the actions, change the behaviors, so forth, to create change
100%.
in my life. And I'm going to do that intentionally.
Yep.
Another one of my 100%. Favorite words, intentionally. I'm going to be intentional about changing my life. It may be a rocky road, and it may have good days and bad days and so forth, but the reality is I'm taking the long big picture of this, and I'm going to change my life.
100%. And like that, and that's that's one of the things that Western medicine has a hard time understanding is they lean towards the victimization, where it's like, well, it's always their hormones, or it's blank and blank.
I got bad genes.
Yeah, I got bad genes. It's like, it's just not. Number one, it's not really true, and number two, how does that help you? How does that serve you? You don't like where you're at, and you're just gonna fall into this rut of like, I like the Jordan Peterson statement. He's like, one of the most disingenuous things you can tell somebody is who hates where they're at that they're okay with where they're at. Like, how is that loving and helpful and supportive? You're telling somebody that hates where they're at that it's okay. You're okay where you are. That's the most disingenuous thing you could. I would be like, one of the most empathetic things you can tell somebody is, hey, if you hate where you're at, I believe in you. You can change. Like we can do this. Like that's the most empathetic thing you can do. And then the two other main ones is honestly the simplicity. Number one, it's calories. It really is. Everyone wants to talk about hormones and everyone wants to talk about all this kind of stuff. And while yes, those things have influence, they absolutely do. Calorie deficit is the only way you burn body fat. Point blank, period. There's only one mechanism, which is caloric deficit. Now, we can talk about what influences how to burn more calories. We can talk about how to influence how many calories you're consuming with whole foods and fiber. And we can talk about which foods absorb faster and absorb slower, which affects the total calories being consumed and burned. All of that stuff can be talked about. But there is no question you have to be at a calorie deficit in order to burn body fat. That's number one. And number two, prioritize protein. That one's just an unequivocal fact too. Like there is a hierarchy of importance when it comes to calories. And the number one most important calorie is protein. Like eating more lean proteins. If you want to go vegan, vegetarian, it's totally fine. You just have to work a little harder to focus on protein. But it's about protein. And consuming more protein helps with hunger, helps with the feeling of fullness, helps with the thermogenic effect of food, helps with putting on muscle, which helps with metabolism. There's just so many benefits in prioritizing the focus of protein within calories that those are the two main hitters when it comes from a nutritional lens. And then I'll just say one last one is finding a fitness routine you enjoy. It's got to be enjoyable. Ideally, strength training, like having some type of strength training routine. But again, you're telling me that people in the bush of South America are lifting weights? No, they're living a life where they're moving their body and they live to 100, and like they're living on a farm and they're doing some physical activity. But again, you just got to find this, like you can't sit all day. So if it's a step goal, great. If it's a HIIT training workout with friends, great. If it's working out yourself and it does not matter. It's just finding a fitness routine where you move your body more consistently. And that's where I always say, do it from enjoyment. If it's playing pick up basketball, that's great. Like whatever fitness routine that's going to bring the most joy to you, do that. And that's it.
Yeah, you got to get your body moving, and that's my biggest challenge. I mean,
Yep.
I complain about all the travel I did, but my body was moving.
Yep.
Going to meetings, moving around the city that I was in and so forth, moving around airports, whatever, I was moving. Whereas
Yep.
now in the coaching world, like I am right at this very moment, sitting in front of my computer, having conversations, sitting on my butt
Yeah.
with my clients and so forth, I have to kind of force the issue more than I used to in the past with the movement.
That's where I literally
Part of the reason why I got 2 puppy dogs, because I go out on walks with them all the time.
Well, that's a great. I was about to say that's a great one. Like, hey, you got a dog? Okay, I got to take him on a walk now,
Yep.
so that gets you out of the house. I literally get 10,000 steps in before noon, because like just like you, I do a lot of time behind a computer like this, and so if I don't get my fitness and my steps in before noon, I won't get it in the rest of the day.
Yep.
And so that's where it's like I just set my pattern around getting the fitness out first, and then it's like, hey, if I'm relatively sedentary the rest of the day, it is what it is. I already got it in. Like I hit my 10,000 steps. We're good there. I did my workout. We're good. So now I'm behind a computer for the next 6 hours. Okay, that's fine. I already hit my fitness stuff. My nutrition and fitness side is done. So, yeah.
Well, unfortunately, our time is coming to a close. I could talk to you forever about this stuff, but if people want to reach out to you and understand more about what we talked about, or take you on as a client of yours, or anything of that nature, what's the best way they can reach out to you?
Yeah, my easiest, honestly, is Instagram with my DMs. That's my favorite, which is all my social medias are fit_DRock, DROCK. Instagram, TikTok, all that kind of stuff. You can email me. It's fitdrock@gmail.com. I loathe emails. I'm not gonna lie. I loathe it. I don't like it, but it is. That's why I like Instagram DM because I can send voice messages.
Yeah,
That's my go-to. And then I'm actually currently not taking on any clients right now. I'm maxed out, and I have other things going on when it comes to this documentary and all this other stuff going on. But I mean, obviously, I still answer questions. Like if someone hits me up and says, "Hey, I have something," hit me up. I love this. Like I know what it feels like to feel trapped in a 400-pound body or an extremely overweight body, and I just like helping people. Like it's just not fun. Being significantly overweight, not fun. And any way I can help, that's why I'm here.
So, as I forewarned you in the green room, we got one last question for you. We ask every guest on the podcast, and that question is, David, what do the words "generate your value" mean to you?
So generating your value to me means, number one, you are in control of the value you bring to this world, and no one is entitled to, like, you're a blank slate, and your value is as much as you generate to the world, and own that. And you can generate nothing to this world, or you can generate more to this world that you know what to do with. But ultimately that comes down to you as an individual and the value you bring. So be honest, be consistent, be open-ended to criticisms and growth, and you can make a big impact. But that generation of value is gonna come down to how you deal with it.
Yeah, I get into this with personal branding conversations with my clients. It's, to put it in business terms, are you a commodity? In which case you have a pretty generic brand, right? Or are you going to build your brand, be something more than just a commodity in this world, generate your value, and have a very strong brand? Because you're making an impact. You're putting ripples out into the world or whatever to help change it in some way or impact people's lives in a positive way.
100%. And you can tell the difference.
Oh, yeah.
It's so easy.
Yeah. So, David, I can't thank you enough for coming on to the podcast and sharing your wisdom with the world. I know I got some things out of this listening audience. I hope you did too. Got some golden nuggets, as I say, from our conversation that you can use to integrate into your life at the very least. Hoping, fingers crossed, that if you're not doing it today, take ownership of your life. Develop that mindset to say, nobody else is going to do it for me. I'm in charge. The best way to create to build the future is to create it. And you create it by having that intentional mentality of saying, I'm going to take ownership of my life. What kind of life do I want for myself? What do you want? You got to create it. Figure out what you want in life and then go out and create it for yourself. And it may be that you've got to create game plans and a mindset that David talked about with us today to go make that happen for yourself. So, can't thank you enough for taking your valuable resource listening audience called time, spend it with David and I in our conversation. We're out with an episode every week. Subscribe on your major platforms so you don't miss an episode. And with that being said, I hope you have a great day, great week. We'll see you next week. And thank you once again for listening to the Generate Your Value podcast. Take care. Thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of the Generate Your Value podcast. If you find our conversations to be useful in your life, I invite you to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode.
You can find me online at Instagram at _Zach.Levy, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
For information on my coaching services, visit my website at www.generateyourvalue.com. You can also find me and my company on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and Instagram. Simply search for Generate Your Value on those platforms.
Once again, thanks for joining us for today's podcast, and we invite you to generate your value in this world.